Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of What You Talking About. Today's guest is Bethany Flores. She is a 4 times CrossFit Games athlete and is returning to the Games this year after 2 years off due to COVID and injury. One of the most well-known names in the sport, Bethany is a force to be reckoned with, and I for one can't wait to watch her come back this year. We chat about what it takes to get back and all of her experiences so far. Make sure you like, share and subscribe to be the first to hear all about our new episodes and content, and as always, we hope you enjoy. Bethany, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me on here.
It's such a pleasure. It is that time of year. You are back in the lead up to the Games. How are you feeling? How's everything? How's the body? How's the mind?
Yeah. I woke up this morning and I was like, yeah, I feel like I'm in games training, which I'm actually very grateful for, but definitely feel a little beat up. And it's just the time of the year. And I think when you have off a couple of years, you just become more grateful for the experiences. And so that's kind of just how I feel. Like, I'm like, man, I'm tired. I feel beat up. Things are hurting. But at the same time, grateful to be able to even be here and do this. And as I was reflecting on last year, and I was just kind of in between things, just not really in a routine. And I thrive with routine. So grateful for just routine and being beat up.
Yeah, I love it. It's one of them things. It's when you talk to like elite athletes, they're like, yeah, I'm in pain, but it's a good thing. I'm like hurting.
Yeah. You're like, that's why I don't do that.
Like, I don't push myself that hard. I just do it for fun.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about, obviously, you've had quite a wild few years, particularly in response to the Games. But going back, correct me if I'm wrong here with the dates, but you started CrossFit 2015 and you were at your first Games 2017. Is that right?
You are correct. Yeah,
that
you got
seems
it.
like a very short period of time.
Yeah.
Can you summarize a little bit about kind of how you found CrossFit and how I suppose you figured out you were good enough to get to the Games so quickly?
Yeah. So I was a competitive gymnast growing up, and I think a lot of gymnasts, they kind of just they want to find the next thing that kind of makes them feel the same way in gymnastics, because it was highly competitive. You're competing a lot, you're pushing your body, you're learning new skills. And so once I got done with gymnastics, I tried a ton of things and I liked them all, but they were nothing was like, that's it. That's exactly what I want to do. So I did like long distance running for a little bit, track and cross country in high school, uh, triathlons, obstacle course racing, bodybuilding, the list goes on. And then eventually I was introduced to CrossFit. I think the first workout I actually did was Murph. And I was like, oh, this is kind of fun in a weird way. It sucks, but it's fun. And so I just kind of got hooked after that. And then slowly but surely after, so I started in 2015 in the fall. And after that, I was like, well, I'm going to try like some local competitions and just see if I actually really like this and competing in it. And I was pretty much hooked after that.
So obviously you did gymnastics and a lot of things. Did you always, when you were trying to find the next sport, was it always going to be competitively?
Oh yeah, always. I can't help but be competitive. Even if I say I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna do this for fun. There's just like a second gear that automatically I feel like kicks in when I go and compete in whatever I'm doing. And I just can't help but just kind of like push myself to the limit. So yeah, I can't help it.
That's why you are where you are. So in relation to CrossFit, I suppose, because as you say, there's a lot of local comps. Obviously, you've been to the biggest competition and kind of the highest level. Was how quickly from starting did you think, right, that's where I want to be? I want to be elite. I want to get to the Games. How quickly did that happen for you?
I would say like after the 2016 open, I felt like I kind of started taking it a little bit more serious. And I was like, oh, like I could actually do something with this. And then I think in 2017, before that season started, I did Wadapalooza for like so they had like the different tiers that you could do. And so I was right below elite. I did RX, and it was like my first 3-day competition, and it was awful. I wanted to quit after it. It was so hard because I had never really experienced anything like that. Even in gymnastics, like you compete for a day, no, I don't think I ever did anything else that you competed multiple days in a row. And I just remember getting to the second day and I was like, I'm tired. Like, I'm really tired. I don't know if I can do this for another day. And I just remember getting to the third day and I was like, I want to quit. I don't want to do this anymore. And then like a couple days after, you're like, no, that was fun. I actually really like that. So it's just like this weird, I don't know, I must be crazy. But I think after, I would say more specifically after that, I was like, okay, I think I want to do this at a higher level and just kind of see what I can do. But I don't think I took it like super serious until like probably 2019, 2020.
Yeah, that's so interesting you say about the 3 days. I want to like loop back to that bit because if you think about, I suppose, any sport, even
Yeah.
if they're competing numerous days in a row, they're kind of competing like, say, it's athletics, for 5 minutes or an hour, but you're competing from like what, 8-10 hours a day, like obviously not the whole day, but a long
Yeah.
period of time over, I suppose, to the games, 5 days. How
Yeah.
like how do you go from not competing at all, I suppose, to then like throwing yourself into that? Like, how does your body react to that for the first time? I suppose, like looking back at Wadapalooza, how did you
Yeah.
cope?
Oh man. I mean, I feel like the best way to learn is just to kind of like dive head deep into the into the water. And so I feel like your body adapts pretty quickly to whatever you put it through. And so yeah, even like the first games experience, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm dead. Like after like the second day, I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. But I guess as the years went on, your body just kind of adapts to it. It's kind of crazy, and it's cool. It's cool that your body does do that, but there's no way around it except for just doing it. And so that's kind of like where I feel like my um all this experience these last couple of years kind of got me to this point where maybe physically I'm not at 100% because of my back, but I have all of this experience and all this time I've been to the games and 3 and 4 day competitions, and like rookies, like they've never experienced anything like that. And so when they go to the games, it's like getting hit in the wall like with your face. And you're like, wow, this is it's a whole nother monster. So sometimes you have to rely on your experience and your laurels a little bit.
Yeah. So it's crazy to think. So you say 2019, 2020, that 2019 was kind of your last in-person experience at the games, right? Because 2020 was all online. Firstly, what was it about that year, I suppose, that made you kind of start taking it more seriously? Was there anything in particular that flipped for you? That changed your mind?
Yeah, I just feel like every year I started chipping away at the things that I could tell were that I wasn't doing well, if that makes sense. And I knew for me, like I wanted to try to make this an actual career and not something that I just did for fun really quickly and then switch to something else. And with everything that I did before CrossFit, it was like go 110%. And I really got burnt out from that. So having that in mind, I was like, I just need to every year chip away at something, like get better at training and like my training schedule, or get better at sleeping, but get better at nutrition, and just kind of chip away every single year. And so I feel like by the third year I went to the CrossFit Games, I did not have it all figured out, that's for sure. But I felt like I had a little bit more of a handle on some stuff. And I think it just really I mean, getting eighth place in 2019, I was like, okay, like I can do this. Like I can do something in the sport. So I think that was kind of just a mindset shift for me. And I wouldn't say I was taking it 100% serious and taking ownership of everything, but I felt like I was getting more of a grip of where I wanted to go with the sport.
How much, looking back, coming 8th and you're coming off like your best finish, a really, really great games, to then the next year having to do it like all online.
Yeah.
Only the top 5 are actually going to get to experience this. Like, it was such a weird thing. I remember watching it, and it's so weird, you know, watching it with a million people on screen. You're like, where am I going? It was so hard to even kind of articulate that as an experience. Like, watching, what was it like being in it?
Honestly, it just felt like the Open. You know, it was like another online qualifier. It really didn't feel like the games experience. Uh, and I feel like everyone has their story of how they felt in 2020. But I was plagued with a lot of injuries. So I didn't even want to compete. I was just hoping, I was crossing my fingers. I was like, I hope it just doesn't happen at all, which is a terrible mindset to be in. But that was just like the truth. I was like just dealing with so many injuries, and I was like, oh, I just don't want to compete because I know that I won't be at my best. And yeah, so the entire weekend, even though like it felt like the Open, I was just, my headspace was just not there whatsoever. And it showed. Like I got 20th place. I was like, oh, I just want this whole weekend to be over with. I don't want to be here. I know I'm not in shape, like all that stuff. But yeah, it definitely wasn't like the games experience that you would want. And I feel like for me as a competitor, I do better in person, like on the competition floor. So maybe even if I'm not at my best, I think maybe possibly I would have finished a little bit better just being in front of the crowd and just feeding off of that. So it was definitely different.
Yeah, I cannot imagine. I mean, it's hard enough, like even you talk about online qualifiers, people who aren't, you know, at your level, doing an online qualifier is pretty hard, and a lot of the time you'll even have your box like surrounding you and cheering you on, but to literally do it with the bare minimum of people, I cannot imagine. Flipping that then, a year later, a totally different experience leading up to the games. I want to talk first about you had a really kind of very well kind of publicized training crew, because it was a lot of people that a lot of people were following, and I remember kind of watching the quarterfinals and things. That was all like over on YouTube and everything. How does that compare, kind of even just in the lead up to semis, having people back in the gym and a training crew around you who are doing it with you?
Yeah, you know, honestly, like that was the most like I guess comfortable or physically prepared semifinals I was at, because I had the number 3 girl in the world training right next to me the entire time. And then I had Danielle that was like she's so talented and so fit. It's unbelievable. So that whole weekend at semifinals just felt like another training weekend, because we were pushing that hard pretty much every single day, and like just battling every day in the gym during training. So that was like, yeah, I was just like, man, this feels like, you know, it felt like home. And obviously we had the home advantage too of being in Las Vegas. So that was kind of nice. Because it was definitely a disadvantage not living there with how dry it is.
Ask about this.
It was terrible. I think it took me like 2 months to adapt to just the environment there. So I felt really bad. I was trying to give everyone tips of like the people that showed up. I was like, you gotta just chug the electrolytes, get some beta alanine in you, like try to buffer the lactic acid because it's gonna hurt. But yeah, I just felt really comfortable, and it was a really cool experience for all 3 of us to stand on the podium together, like a very special thing that if you look at the other training camps, I don't think any other training camp has been able to do that. And that just shows that like what we were doing in training was working and just pushing to the limits. It was really cool.
Is there anything, like obviously you're all competitive and you all want to win, is there anything like, obviously you were at the top of the podium, is it like anything, any part of you that's like, oh, I kind of wish they won? Or was it just like, as long as you were up there together, as long as you qualified, like what was your attitude competitively going into that semifinals in 2021?
Honestly, I went into it and I was like, man, I just hope I make it. I didn't know, because you just like, you have the people that you're training with, and I was honestly getting beat pretty much every day in the gym. Like I wasn't winning. It was very rare that I actually won. And so I kind of went into it with the headspace of like, man, I hope I get like fifth place at least, you know? And so when everything kind of actually happened at semifinals, I was just surprised the entire weekend. I was like, oh, wow, I can't believe this is actually happening. But you know, you always want everyone to just do well. Like you want to be able to beat people when they're at their 100% best, you know.
Mhm.
At least that's how I see it. So I always want everybody and whoever I'm competing against to be 100% healthy, their headspace to be there the entire time. And like, let's actually push each other on the floor. So that's mostly what I was thinking about is just I want everyone to be healthy and just push.
Yeah, it was such a great weekend. That was probably, I remember watching that semi-finals and just being glued to the screen. It was such a, like the competitiveness and the level of all of you was just insane. You said a little bit about home advantage. How much does that actually make a difference? Because as you say, like the atmosphere is hugely
Yeah.
different, but just understanding it all, do you like, obviously I know in jest maybe you say home advantage, but do you actually think it made a massive difference to particularly the three of you who were training there and then obviously podiumed?
Yeah. I think it does. Especially there in that environment, just because there is elevation. It's not very high, but there's still elevation. And then it's so dry there.
Mhm.
But on the opposite end, if you go anywhere else, it's a disadvantage. So it's like when you go to Madison, it's so humid there, or even Miami for like Wadapalooza, that living in Vegas is actually a disadvantage. I thought it was going to be an advantage. I was like, oh, we're going to be in elevation. I'm going to feel so good when I go anywhere else. And I was like, yeah, I feel terrible. This is not good. But yeah, to the opposite side, like we got to sleep in our own bed every single night, which because we were like 20 minutes away from the competition. So that was a huge advantage. Um, yeah, just not having to travel it's just so hard on your body to travel. And
Mhm.
I think like as specifically for like athletes and we're just like so in tune with our bodies and very sensitive. So like when we go and have to travel and get on a plane and like not sleep in your own bed, like you just feel it.
Mhm.
Obviously you like deal with it because that's what you just have to do for most competitions. But man, I was like, man, we are lucky to be here
Yeah.
in Vegas and have that advantage. And same for this semifinals, like I wanted to sleep in my own bed, but unfortunately in California, a 20-mile drive is like 2 hours, so I
Yeah.
didn't. But it was still like in California, so you're used to like the weather and all of that and the climate. So it was still an advantage, I believe.
Yeah, and I suppose even taking away like a pre-comp flight and all that, like I think
Yeah.
people probably forget how much. Like you see, I suppose what are we like nearly a 3-4 weeks out from the games, and you see that people are getting to Madison now, and you're like, because
Yeah.
you need to get yourself into the zone and prep now. How
Yeah.
important is it to when you like arrive somewhere to settle into that environment? Like how quickly do you think you need to do it to be ready for competing?
Uh, like I go back and forth with that. Like sometimes I actually do better with just like showing up right before and doing it compared to like being there for like a week before. Because I've done both, especially in Madison. But I I don't know if this was a good idea, but when I did Dubai back in 2018, I literally showed up the day before. I was like, and I felt okay for some reason because I was like getting up at 5 a.m. every morning and we had to get up at like 6 anyways. But I think that was actually okay. I think like trying to acclimate in Dubai, 16-hour flight, like all of that, and be out there for a week could have been a disadvantage for me. It's almost like you just got to rip off the band-aid.
Yeah.
And then like with Madison too, like I've been out there like a week before, and I sometimes get antsy if I'm just out
Yeah.
there and I'm not in my own environment and there's like really nothing else to do except for wait around and train a little bit. And so I found for me personally, like I do better just showing up the last minute kind of thing. So like we have to be there by Monday morning. So I'm
Yeah.
just flying out Sunday and I just want to stay in my own environment for as long as possible, even though like yes, it's way more humid over there. There's a kind of a time difference or whatever, but yeah, I just found for me, I do better with just as close as possible and then fly out there.
That's absolutely fair enough. So 2021 then, did you make it to Madison before you found out? So very unfortunately you tested positive for COVID, like literally probably that Monday, right? A week before the games, the week of the games. You were going in first place semi-finals, like everyone was talking, you were one of them names that everyone was talking about. Tell me, like, if you don't mind, because I'm sure it's probably quite horrible to remember and talk about, but like that week and that experience, kind of having that taken away from you, what was it like?
Honestly, like the bigger picture and perspective that I had throughout the entire thing that happened was that I was mentally prepared for something like that. I started doing like a lot of mental work, just mental, emotional work on myself in 2019 after the CrossFit Games. And so, even though it still sucked, like I'm not going to say that it didn't, I was like at peace with it for some reason. And honestly, I was so sick that I couldn't even think about competing. So I was actually hoping it was COVID, because I feel like silver lining, saying that you have COVID compared to like, oh, she's just under the weather, is two different things. And I think like, unfortunately, people respect the fact that like it was COVID compared to like, oh, she's just sick, silver lining. But I was down for the count. Like I was body aches and chills, and like I couldn't even touch my own skin, and I was like, I can't even think about getting out of bed right now. So I knew that I had something going on. And but when I got back from Madison, I think it hit me a little bit more. It's just kind of like, this is sad. So I literally for like 2 days, I just had my hood on the couch, and I just watched the CrossFit Games. And I was just like, I need to mourn a little bit. My husband was like, what are you doing? I was like, I have to do this. I have to watch. So I think it was kind of a bummer once I started feeling a little bit better. I was like, man, this sucks. But I truly and wholeheartedly believe like everything happens for a reason. I know that's very cliche to say, but like I truly believe that like it wasn't for me that year for some reason. And I needed to go through what I went through these last 2 years to truly get to the bottom of myself with a lot of things and just take more ownership of stuff. And I think a missing link in my career has always been like the mental game and just having confidence in myself. And there is a lot of like low self-esteem and self-worth. And I could tell because of the things that I was doing outside of the gym, and almost like self-sabotaging myself because I just never thought I was worthy of anything good, especially in my CrossFit career. So I'm actually really grateful for the last 2 years, even though it's been hard. It's been really hard. But I think when you start taking ownership of stuff and just kind of really reflecting on the person that you want to be and like what's actually going to bring you fulfillment and joy, I think that you just flourish as a person. And so that's kind of just where I feel like I am. Like, I still really want to do well in CrossFit, and I truly believe that I can get on the podium for the first time. Like, I have all the capabilities to get on the podium, whether that's for me or not in my actual career. We're going to find out, right? But just building the self-worth and the self-confidence means everything more to me than just like a placement, the money that you get, because that stuff is all great, but it's actually not going to bring fulfillment and joy at the end of the day. So just having more alignment with what I want in life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I remember you posting, I can't remember if it was maybe during semi-finals, something about how you kind of were a people pleaser before, or you still maybe are, I agree, but you were doing things for other people.
We always are.
People pleaser to people pleaser.
Yeah,
I get you.
We're addicts. We can't help it.
Yeah, but I suppose when you work on that, and it's like I'm majorly working on it at the moment, but obviously not competing at the games for 2 years through no fault of your own, going from kind of maybe feeling like you were disappointing other people, is that where there's been a shift as well, because you don't feel like you've done that so much anymore? Like how's the shift there? Because like I remember reading that post that you'd written, and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, no, she shouldn't feel like this. But obviously, as you know, whatever anyone says sometimes can't help. But how was that shift when you obviously missed 2 seasons? You know, like for you, how do you feel about it now?
Yeah. Honestly, I would go back even more. So like that's the whole reason, like I even started my mental health journey in 2019 after it literally happened like right after the games. For some reason I was like, I don't deserve this. It was a fluke. And I had a lot of people that supported me and loved me, but I just didn't let anybody in because I didn't want to let anybody down. I think that was part of the problem. And I feel like a lot of people can resonate with that. They're just like, I just have to keep everybody at bay. So like if I actually fail at something and suck, then I don't feel like the weight of the world on my shoulders. And which is like so far from the truth anyways. That's such a lie that is just told in our heads over and over again. It's just funny to think about it now. But that's where I was at. Like my headspace was there. And so I think just continuing to like not give up when things were going south for me, and just continuing to work on myself and the self-esteem, the self-worth, and the self-confidence. I just have really invited those people that have always supported me and loved me and just advocated for me in. And it's been like just the biggest difference in my career, honestly, so far, and honestly just in life. But you just realize that those advocates, like they're there for you no matter what. Like they don't care. It's not contingent on anything. Like it's not, if you do this, then we're going to love you. Yes, they're going to celebrate when you do well, right? But they're also going to be there for you when you fail, when you're not doing well. And so I think that was one of the many lessons I had to learn these past 2 years and not competing, is to lean on community. And that is everything. Like you have to have community, and you have to tattletale on yourself when things aren't going well. And I think when I stopped like trying to, I don't know, I just tried to use other things and cope with other things like alcohol and just really bad things in my life when things weren't going well. And when I just stopped numbing things and I actually owned up to when things were hard in my life, and I was feeling, seasons of depression or anxiety, and I talked about it with people instead of just like suppressing it and trying to deal with it on my own, that has just been like the biggest difference in my life. And it's like, you're never going to be immune to those feelings. I think everyone has some form of scale of depression and anxiety. But I feel like a lot of people, on the other hand, numb it with things because they just don't want to deal with it. And sometimes they don't even know that they're doing that. They're just it's just on autopilot. And I think that was me for the longest time. I was just on autopilot and I didn't know that I was even doing that. But yeah, when I started actually sitting in my emotions of depression and anxiety and sharing that with people and just taking ownership, man, it's just made like the biggest difference. And there's so much freedom with that. And so I think it's just allowed me to be on the floor or do what I want to do in my CrossFit career and not feel like I have to please anybody with it. And I'm actually doing it for myself for the first time. So one of the many reasons why I'm grateful for the last 2 years.
Absolutely. And I think there's probably something around like being an athlete, being a professional athlete, you have kind of this persona in a way, right, to be strong and to be like mentally ready for things. And I think more and more now people are opening up about, actually, you don't have to be like that. I think in CrossFit, like you talk about community, one thing in the last year, like your community's kind of changed, right? Because you've moved and things have shifted. How does that affect your kind of mental game? Obviously we'll talk about your physical game in a minute, but mentally moving away from potentially like your safe space, or maybe not a safe, like how does it shift mentally going from like, well, moving states? Or you didn't move states? Did you move states? You did.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
no, you got it. You're right.
Like moving states, having this kind of big life change, How does that affect your mental game?
I think overall it's been good. I think physically, my body held up in 2021 with pushing really hard. Like I was saying earlier, like we were pushing every day really hard in the gym because we're all competitive and that's just kind of what you do. And luckily my body held up with that. But I think after coming back after COVID and stuff, my body just wasn't adapting to all the pushing. And so, and like going out to Vegas too, I was only going to be out there for a couple of years because once my husband and I got married, it was time for me to kind of make some sacrifices and move wherever he's at because he has his own career. He works for the Lakers. He's constantly traveling and he sacrificed a lot for the first 3 years of our relationship. Like he would go and travel for a day or up to a week. And then during his off hours, he would fly out to Vegas to come see me for 12 hours. And it was just a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really grateful for that. I was like, man, this guy really loves me. And
he's a keeper.
A lot of sacrifice. Yes, he's a keeper. And so like my mentality going out to Vegas was always to like move wherever he was at once we got married. But I realized too, as a person and as an athlete, that I do well with like smaller groups, like one-on-one or just 2 or 3 people. And we expanded pretty quickly in Vegas, which like awesome, like really cool for Justin and just the growth of underdogs and stuff. But I just realized that that wasn't like the greatest fit for me. And then as my body's gotten older too, like I can't push like that every day. My body like literally breaks down. And that's kind of what I was experiencing at the end of 2021, leading into 2022. It was just like my body was just breaking down constantly as injury after injury after injury. And then like when you're not able to work out in the gym and you're just in pain all the time, I think mentally that gets to you as well. You're just like, man, this isn't fun. Like, I'm not having fun anymore. And I told Justin that I was like, I'm just not having fun. Like, I don't know if my career is over, but I'm just like not having fun anymore because I'm in constant pain. And so I just felt like it was a better move for me to kind of just kind of reset, kind of just do things on my own and just be with myself, which was kind of scary in itself because I went from that environment of just always having people around and pumping you up and training and pushing, which I think is great. But I think for me and where my career was at and just where my body was at, it was time for me to kind of revert back to kind of where I was when I was in Texas. And I did that for a couple of years where I was just training by myself. And luckily it's worked out just because constantly, pretty much every single day since I started the season, I've had to like change things in my programming. So it's been a better fit. But the gym that I'm at, there's like a ton of people. So there's always like energy in the gym. Because if you're training by yourself and there's no one in the gym, that's not fun. You're like, the energy is so low. But I feel like it's been a good transition where like I'm doing my own stuff and I feel mentally pretty great about it, but there's still people in the gym. So yeah, I think there's pros and cons to it all.
Absolutely. And so you made kind of your own decision last year not to compete, not to take part in the season because of injury, in particular your back. I personally really like, but you have been so honest about that, like over your Instagram and everything, showing kind of every aspect about how you don't have to, as you say, you don't have to push yourself to the limit every day. You have to do what's right for you. Do you think if this had happened to you, say 2019, 2020, do you think you would have pulled out of the season, or do you think you would have carried on?
Well, I wouldn't say that I pulled out. My back pulled out for me. So it was actually my back literally just gave out on me, and I was like, well, all right. So honestly, if I have to be completely transparent, I probably would have continued to just try to push through it if I had made it through quarterfinals last year. And that was the goal. I was like, I just need to get through this. So I think it actually needed to be like a physical, like something physical to happen for me to stop, because I'm very hard-headed. And I was hearing voices like in my head years prior of like, you need to do less, you need to do less. and I just continued not to listen to it, and I continued to get injured constantly. And so, yeah, I don't think unless it was like physically something happening to me that I would have stopped and learned all the lessons that I needed to learn these last 2 years. If I have to be transparent. But I am grateful for it. I'm grateful that because it's still a choice, right? Like I still had a choice in it all of learning and taking ownership, even when I couldn't compete. But I will have to say, for a while, I was stuck kind of like in a victimized mindset and just sad, and I wanted to quit after last year and everything that happened, and I just wanted to be done with it all because I was like, I'm in pain. Like I've been in pain basically for a full year. Like once the season started this year, I was still in a lot of pain, and I didn't know if I was going to compete at all because I couldn't do a lot. But I don't know, I just kind of I owed it to myself to see this through to the other side, if that makes sense, because my husband told me this and I was like really reluctant at first. I was like, but it's true that like you should never make it like a big life decision or a career decision when you're in pain or just like not having fun, you know? And so I was like, I need to get through this season and see where like my headspace is at, and see if I can redeem some stuff. And I'll know like at the end of the season, which it's been completely different for me this year, if it was the right decision for me to come back. But sometimes you have to risk some things and take a chance before you make like a huge life decision like that. You don't just quit when things are hard and you're not having fun. So hard as it was, I was like, I got to see this through to the other side.
Absolutely. And you are, of course, there is. So semi-final seems kind of ages ago, but it wasn't that long ago.
Wow.
Going into that weekend, how were you feeling physically? Like what were your pain levels? How were you feeling going into the weekend?
I was at peace with the fact that I was going to have to pull out at any second. That's kind of been the theme this whole year. It was just going to be dependent on what the workouts were and how my body was feeling on that particular day, with the open, with quarterfinals, and especially with semifinals. Because like 2 weeks before, I could like barely put my sock on my foot. I was in that much pain. And everything that I tried to do that was an event for semifinals, like it just kind of left me in pain. So I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. So yeah, I just was at peace with the fact that like, okay, like if it's not for me, it'll physically be shown that it's not for me. But at the same time, I was like, I don't think that I would have made it this far if it wasn't for me, if that makes sense. I had to conquer a lot during quarterfinals. I was in crippling pain during quarterfinals. And after like the second day, I could like barely move, and I thought I was going to have to pull out. But I think I conquered this fear mindset that I had. And I mean, it goes into a lot more detail than that, but I felt like I conquered this headspace that I've been in for like almost 2 decades of my life. And I was able to finish the last day, which I was like, that was a miracle in itself, because I literally couldn't do anything that night. I was like walking with a hunch on my back. And I was crying that night, and I was like, I'm gonna have to pull out. I'm in so much pain. And somehow I just woke up and I was okay. So yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, I just kind of went into semifinals with that same mindset of like, I have the capabilities to do all this stuff. I do. It's in there. But I don't know if my body's going to hold up, and I have to be at peace with the fact that I may have to pull out at any second. So we're just going to see what happens. And then here we are. Like it was literally a miracle. It was cool for that to happen. And a lot of people are like, it's not a miracle. And I'm like, no, well, a miracle is like luck plus opportunity plus discipline. And I felt like I just had all that stuff happen at the same time. Like I have been so disciplined with what I need to do outside of the gym this year. And you definitely need a little luck for that to happen, for everything just to kind of like line up for a weekend, and you need that opportunity, right? And I got all of that, and I was just not in pain the entire weekend,
Wow,
which
yeah.
I was like, how is this even happening right now? How am I not in pain? And then the fact that I didn't even have to struggle the entire weekend in the sense of placement wise. Like,
Yeah.
I thought if I was going to make it, I was going to get that last spot and have to fight teeth and nails, and it'd be like the last event where I'd have to push really hard. But like, my mind was blown the entire weekend. I was like, how am I doing this? Not going to question. I'm just going to keep my head down and be present. So
And
it was cool.
yeah, and you know what? I think as a viewer, and I mean this with no disrespect at all, I think people were kind of quite shocked to see you'd had this kind of, you were back and everything, and everyone was excited to see you back, but also I don't think necessarily anyone had huge expectations. And I suppose, again, because you've been so transparent with all the little things you've been doing, but also how much pain you've been in and how much work you're having to do, everyone was kind of like, oh, it's amazing she's doing semi-finals, but she's just going to do it.
That's it. Yeah.
Did you go into the weekend, like, obviously I assume you wanted to qualify and that was your goal, but did you expect it? Were you like, this is my goal, I'm going to be really disappointed if I'm not? Like, what was your goal going into the weekend?
Yeah, it was definitely not my goal. I think from the beginning of the season, I've had this thing in my heart where I'm like, I'm going to the games this year, but I was like, I don't know how I'm going to, because just physically how I'm training right now is crazy and not what I've done in the past. So that was definitely not where like my headspace was at. It was more about just kind of redeeming everything, because I think how I felt last year and just like wanting to quit and just like being mentally burnt out. And even at Wadapalooza in 2022, like, it was the first competition I think where I was like, I don't want to be here. Like, I'm not having fun. I want to quit with every workout. Like, just, I'm done. Like, I think I'm done. And so that was more of my goal the entire weekend, was like, I just want to be at peace and like really redeem the way I felt the last couple of years. And then it would be shown if I could do that and I felt a lot of peace, like, okay, this is for me. Like, I'm supposed to be here, like, I'm supposed to finish these next couple of years in this career. And so, yeah, I just was like really grateful that that's where my headspace was at, because it wasn't like I was more physically fit than any other year, or even I would say I was as fit as I was at Wadapalooza in 2022, but like the mental side was completely different.
Yeah.
So different. And so, yeah, that's what I was really focusing on, is I want to have fun. I don't want it to be the stressful thing where I'm like, I just want to quit with every workout, because that's not fun at all.
Absolutely not. And as you say, here we are. You are 3 weeks out from the games ish. By the time this is out, though, it will be very close to the games. So as you say, you had a feeling you were going to be at the games, and that was what you thought was going to somehow happen. What's your feelings, goals, thoughts going in to the games this year? What do you want to get out of it?
Yeah, I think it's the same headspace. Like, I want to really enjoy my time on the floor, because being an athlete and stuff, it's such a special thing that we get to do. And it's sometimes a short shelf life, and like, when it's taken away from you, it just kind of puts things in perspective. And so I think for me, it's like really important to just enjoy each workout and give whatever effort that I can, whatever percentage of effort that I can, with each individual workout, and not feel sorry for myself. I think a lot of people, when we're out there and you're not in a good headspace, I think it's really easy to feel sorry for yourself, because we're like pushing ourselves really, really hard every single workout, and it's hot, it's whatever, it's humid, we're sweating everywhere. And so, yeah, I feel like that's one of the biggest goals for me, is just to really embrace the entire weekend, just be really grateful for things, be at peace, and just continue to redeem what I felt last year, and just be able to like serve and impact other women too. I think there's a whole new era coming up right now with a lot of youngsters, and it's crazy to be like, man, 30 and there's people that are like 12 years younger than me competing. But I think like as veterans, and there's a lot of us now in the sport still, like we have an opportunity to continue to change the culture and the community in CrossFit, especially with the women. I feel like in any sport that you go into, there's a lot of women that are just not happy when other people do well. And I definitely experienced that the first couple of years. Like there's still really amazing girls, but there was still a lot of like cattiness, and I don't like that. I don't get that. And I think you should just always empower each other when like they do well at something. So that's always like an underlying goal when I go to a competition, is just to like be happy for other people, help other people, because like I said earlier, like I want people to be at their best. And then I want to beat them at their best, you know, but if they don't, but if they beat me, it's like, well done, you know, like awesome. And yeah, it's such a long weekend, and people are going to remember your character over your placement at the end of the day. Like no one remembers who got, I don't know, like 6th place at the games last year. Like no one remembers, you know? And so like, but they're going to remember how you responded and you reacted, you know? Absolutely. So that stuff is just way more important to me than any placement. So I just want to have fun and be able to help other women too.
For sure. I absolutely love that. And I, for one, am really looking forward to seeing you back on the games floor. I'm gonna let you go in just a second, but I have to ask you some quick fire questions before.
Yeah, sure.
Firstly, your favorite overall lift in the gym to do?
I definitely like snatch. Yeah, it's kind of like a golf swing, you know, like you know when you have like a really good hit, right? And it's like the same thing with snatch. Like you're gonna have, you know, 9 out of 10 terrible days, and then you finally have that one good day and you're like, ah, that was awesome, and you feel it. So it's very technical, so I like it.
Favorite overall movement?
I feel like I used to really love, but now as I get older, I can't really do them as much, and my knees don't feel that great. So I don't know. I really like rope climbs, even though maybe I'm not like the best at them, but they're challenging. So maybe I'll go with rope climbs. I've never said that before, but I'm gonna go with rope climbs.
Yeah. And I feel like you probably don't do them as often as a lot of things, right?
Rope climbs or pistols?
Yeah. Rope climbs.
Rope climbs. Yeah, I mean, we definitely try to hammer them this year, just because like that's one exercise that even if I'm in pain with my back, I can still do. So, but yeah.
And I know, so you said possibly your first ever CrossFit workout was Murph. So your favorite benchmark workout, however?
Ooh. Actually don't mind Fran, because I really like thrusters and I like chest to bar pull-ups, so, or regular pull-ups, I don't even know, but I like pull-ups and thrusters. I'm like one of those weirdos, so I'm gonna go with Fran.
Quite a few people have said that actually. And do you know
really
is whenever I think, if I can think of a competition moment for you, I think it must have been 2021 semi-finals when I was like 100 pull-ups, and everyone, and in a workout, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, she's just done them all. Like it was no one knew what anyone was at, and then all of a sudden you were like, oh yeah, I've done them. Like watching that. So that
maybe I should go with pull-ups as my favorite movement. Oh, you know what? I lied. Okay, I'm gonna go with toe to bar. I like toe to bar.
Okay. You can be everything. And then my final question, obviously you are an individual athlete, but if you were to go to the games on a team and you could build a dream team around you, who would you have by your side?
Ooh. Well, I love me some Carrie, so I'd probably go with Carrie as my other girl. As far as guys go, I don't know. I think Tola is an overall like really amazing athlete. He's so fit, so strong, obviously. And I feel like he's continued, like even when we were in Vegas, he was working on like the endurance part, which is where he lacked. And I feel like he was making a lot of ground there. So I definitely think I would go Tola. Another guy, I mean, you got to go with like the 5th person on earth, right? Justin.
Yeah, there you go.
Because like he would probably never go team, but
you never know.
Man, if you don't go with him, then you're missing out. So
that would be
maybe those
a very very strong team. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much for your time, and as I said, we are wishing you the best of luck this year, but as you say, have fun, enjoy, and we
Yes.
look forward to watching. But thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having me.